Hey everyone, my name's Gunther and thanks for checking the video out. To all of our returning members, I just want to say thank you for your continued support, and to all of our new viewers, I'm really excited to have you here with us and thank you so much for watching this speed build. Oasis Zoo's commitment to providing top quality experiences for our customers has driven the board to decide to invest heavily in a new food court for our guests. Despite experiencing runaway build costs resulting in a round of fundraising to finish the construction of this food court, the end product will serve as an anchor for Oasis Zoo's continued expansion in the area. The board would also like to recognize board member Axel, who spearheaded the drive for a multicolored approach during the construction of the market. Our Spice Market, or souk, will satisfy the cravings of all of our new and returning guests while visiting Oasis Zoo for generations to come. Alright everyone, I really hope that you enjoy this added little tidbit at the beginning of our episodes. I'm really trying to kind of create this this new experience and kind of create like a role play aspect to our overall builds and breathe a little bit of life to Oasis Zoo. So just to really talk about this build a little bit, it was quite the endeavor. It actually spanned 3 days and a total of 5.5 hours of total construction time. So you're going to notice the speed is a little cranked up, and the reason why is because I wanted to provide something that would entertain you, but at the same time not be astronomically long. But in order to build this market, which was something I've never really done before, it took a lot of work and a lot of playing around with it. We started off with our foundation walls, and you kind of saw something which I've talked about in previous episodes, which is really the need to make your walls one wall and then kind of work with it from there. Now, when you kind of think of a market, I'm thinking of something from Aladdin. We really want to see those nooks and crannies, things like that, and that's what I tried to emulate in this build, was just really having a bunch of nooks and crannies that we can kind of layer on top of that. And I'm quickly finding that the best way to build really is to layer, build your foundation and then layer on top of that, which it's definitely really worked out in this build. Now, on top of not only speeding up the build a little bit more than what I'm normally used to, I am going to say that you're going to experience some jump cuts in this overall build. And the reason why is, I don't really want you guys to have to watch a lot of the same thing. And, if I don't have anything really to kind of share a value, I think that's the important thing. Now, during the process of building this overall market, there was a lot of taking a step back and kind of looking at it from multiple angles as well. I'll be honest. I actually built this the first time, didn't really like the way it looked, tore it all down, and rebuilt it. And the idea behind it is that every time you tear something down and when you rebuild it, it's just going to be that much better. What you're seeing right now is I'm really kind of trying to create these front patios for our builds, and the idea behind it is when you're walking down, the doors are not going to be level to the floor or the walkway. Really want to have something that creates a little bit more depth and excitement, and that's how we kind of did it. We also used some of these nifty little steps that you can see, the plaster steps. I was really kind of tormenting myself on how I could kind of fit this together when I stumbled across these things. I know I've seen them multiple times, and I'm surprised I haven't actually built them before, but it definitely worked out. Tried to keep everything a little bit close to the edges though. Really wanted a big long entryway. Now, the entire idea of this overall build was to have something that would be an anchor point for our entire zoo. In previous episodes, we talked about separating North, Central, and South Africa, and I think this is going to be one of the ways we separate our North African exhibits, which we've essentially finished, from the next section. And my hope is that we're going to actually have these exhibits spread off of the end of this alleyway, and when you see it, I think you're going to be really excited about it. Now, we kind of used the same thing that we've seen before, which is these little pillars, the plinths. I really don't know the best way to describe them, but I use them to kind of break up the edges a little bit. And there's one thing I'm really kind of struggling with, which is really kind of hiding edges. I'm not a huge fan of having straight angles. I find that they don't look really natural. It's very man-made, and it's a toss-up between picking something that's man-made and going with it, which we would see in a modern zoo, and picking something that's more natural, which I feel is what we're going to try to go with in this entire zoo, is very natural feels, very earthy tones, and you kind of see that in the construction of the overall build. Not on top of that, you're going to notice, and especially in the first video you saw, the tops of the buildings were white, and it's actually to one of our YouTube viewers, as well as a Discord member, who had the idea of utilizing a different color on the top half to kind of break it up, and you'll see that come at the very end. which is something that, you know, really pulled it all together as well. Now, the other idea of an alleyway is you're going to have these archways, and I really wanted to put these archways in. We're going to go back and put some doors in it after the fact, but really all of day one, which was this entire portion of this build, was just getting the foundation set up for our overall zoo. Now, what you're seeing here as well is just the construction of our windows, and we're going to do a jump cut, but I really wanted to have these unique windows that we can kind of place within our market way to look at really nice. Now, the issue that I have with the pack that is North Africa is I find that there's not a whole lot of items to choose from, and this is a great example. There was one door to choose from that was classified as North African, and it did not do it justice. It was not what I was looking for, so I ended up swapping out to this other, just a generic plain door, and I find that this actually works really well. And then I utilized more of those timbers, which is becoming a favorite of mine, you know, utilizing these timbers throughout the build to kind of hold it all together. And it makes it, you know, it really fits with that entire view. You can also see, you know, from episode 1 to, you know, whatever episode we're on right now, I can't remember, the build speed, the build quality, it's definitely improving. And for those who are just finding this channel now, the entire idea of me doing these videos was to push myself and challenge myself to be better at Planet Zoo. And this really this really pushed my skills to the limit. As I mentioned earlier, you know, one of the longest builds, and we were talking in the Discord about like how long a build should normally be, and this takes the cake for, you know, one of my largest builds that I've had out there. Now, moving on from the overall just construction of the actual buildings, stumbled across this thatch roof, which I gotta say, it fit really well. Again, I don't even think this is actually a North African piece. I think it's just a generic thatch roof, and I gotta say, mixing it in with the North African beams that we see here, really kind of breathed a little bit of extra life and gave it a little bit of extra feel. Now, during the entire build process for this alleyway, I didn't really have a huge vision. I had some ideas. I'd mentioned that I looked up some videos of spice markets. I've looked up some videos, especially from Aladdin. Aladdin, actually, a lot of talk about it. And there's one thing I noticed in a lot of those videos, and they had a lot of greenery associated with it. And I didn't really want to put a whole lot of bushes. You're going to see me kind of play around with it shortly. But I thought about using these ivy vines. And part of the idea is, on these roofs, we have these little openings and, you know, windows, things like that. And ivy hanging off that makes the most sense. Now, in a locale in, you know, North Africa, there's a lot of bland colors, and, you know, part of the reason why I believe that they, you know, would want to have more greenery and they want to have some bright colors on, you know, hanging sheets and sun covers and stuff like that is to kind of give a little bit more excitement to it. Now, this is what I meant by, like, I started to place a plant up there, didn't really like it. Then I decided, you know what, I'm going to use a flower pot instead. Found this African flower pot and changed the color, which I gotta say, really cool that we can do that. And I put it up there, and I thought it was a really bad idea. You can kind of see me play around with it, and then I moved it down, and then I was like, I'll put it here in the corner. Not a good idea, considering we're going to have a building there. I didn't want to have any of the plants hanging through. But we finally landed on something. Now, the other aspect of an alleyway is having some type of market stall, and I really wanted to build my own market stall. You can kind of see me playing around with it, struggling. I actually lost connection to the franchise server there for a few seconds, so I kind of had a heart attack. Part of the reason why I built this twice is actually I lost power halfway through, and I lost the entire recording, which was very depressing. But powered through it, and I gotta say, the second time building it made it look that much better. Now, the first time I built this little market stall, I went ahead with some Australian wood pieces and then mixed in a few other things. I was gonna put a sun cover, it just didn't really work out. Decided I didn't like it. I actually don't know why I didn't like it, and I changed it. And now in hindsight, I actually don't like either one of them. But I think that's the benefit of building in Planet Zoo, is you can build something and be like, man, this looks terrible, and then rebuild it. And every time you rebuild it, you're gonna get something different. Even if you try to build from memory, you want to build the exact same thing, it's gonna be different. And I think in doing so, it really brought it together and made it look a little bit more unique. And you can kind of see me playing around with it, moving some of the beams, using more of those North African aspects of it. Now, I really wanted you to see the entire build process here, because I think it's important that people know that, even when you're building your own thing, nothing works out the same. So I ended up following this Africa pack, and I found these dyed wood that you can kind of change the colors, and I changed them black initially. I actually changed the colors to a brown. I found it to be a little bit better, so it worked out. Actually, after building it, after finishing the entire build, I went back in and I changed it again a little bit. I think I actually lowered them to the ground because they're awfully high where you have them, but I think they kind of pieced it together a little bit. Now, the last aspect of this was just duplicating those towers and bringing them across. I think is important. Now, speaking of towers, I really wanted to add a little bit more flavor to the towers, and I was looking up some videos or photos, if you will, of some North African architecture. And there's one thing I noticed about it, which was a lot of, again, nooks and crannies, grooves, things like that, and really wanted to emulate it. So initially, and I laugh about this because I made so much extra work for myself, and you're seeing this. Initially, I built it on top of the existing wall, and I'm being like, oh, I use the other wall as a backdrop. And then I decided that was a terrible idea, and I actually ended up going through and replacing all the walls. Now, part of the reason why I do this, initially I was trying to cheat. Didn't really want to go through and delete everything, and ended up, making it work. But suffice to say, this is what the end product looked like. Now, on top of that, we had these little bridges, and when you think of towers, and when I was looking at a lot of photos, especially going into alleyways and stuff like that, you would have these overhanging pathways. So I utilized one of the pre-made fences, which it looked really nice, and you're not going to knock something that's really working really well for us. And I kind of placed it on the top, and then I used more of these thatch covers to kind of create an awning, if you will, of when you come in. Now, the other thing I really wanted to kind of utilize some more, not only is the beams that you see there, but is actually more of these natural lamps and lights that you would normally see in North African architecture. So initially kind of played around with a little bit, ended up on these little fire lamps and stuff like that. And then there was also like a hanging gas lamp that we also added in. Now, this is probably the first time I've actually really kind of focused on incorporating lights into the overall build. So what I really want to say is at the end of this video and the end of the entire speed build, there's going to be a night version of the walkthrough as well. And I would encourage you guys to take a look at it, because looking at it at night versus looking at it during the morning, definitely, 100 times different. So, I encourage you to take a look and provide your feedback. Let me know what you think of this. Now, part of the tower as well is, kind of building these entranceways, to get into the tower. And I thought about building this upwards curb, and actually finally utilized these big old doors. And if you think about a tower, which, in my eyes, it was a guard tower, you're going to have these big old doors holding everything together. Now, I couldn't really find a hinge for this door, so actually I ended up settling on one of the door handles, and then just embedded it to kind of give it that feel of like at least something was holding it up. Now, on top of that, I really wanted to kind of cover those holes in the bottom. I didn't want those entranceways to be kind of viewable. So I kind of temporarily covered them up with a plaster wall. And then I added in our gas lamps. I'm actually really happy with how this worked out. Utilized some other fixtures. I placed them, came back and kind of made it again. And then I started adding a little bit more depth to the overbuild. And you can kind of see I was placing the basket. And this is where I found a rope cover. So obviously these gas lamps wouldn't just be hanging on the roof. You would have ropes holding them up, because if you think about it from an architecture perspective, you're going to utilize that. So kind of place some of those down. Had to find 2 of them to make it work, and then I placed some more of these little pillars. And then I decided to change the colors. I wasn't very happy with having them all the same color. It was very bland. I wanted to add a little bit of extra, depth and oomph to the entire build. So I kind of just changed colors, and then I copied the towers, which is the easiest way to build them. Now, the next thing I noticed, and if you were to look at photos as well, the one thing you're gonna notice about another alleyway is they have a lot of these like old rickety tables, and I really wanted to build my own, so I did. I placed my first one down, and then found that it looked a little too flat. Want to have a table, but you want to have a little bit of extra depth to it. So I kind of placed around a lot of these extra, more of these plaques, and gave it a little bit of extra depth to it. I keep on saying that word. I don't really know why. I'm hooked on the word depth apparently, and I was very happy with how it turned out. Didn't really put a whole lot of stuff on the table, but it just added an extra little bit of realism to the overall build, having these things. Now, if you're asking yourself, Gunther, why are you building a lot of things by scratch? A lot of them exist in the market. You're right, they do. You can go on to Steam, you can download them, and that's really cool. The marketplace is awesome for that. But I don't really want to do that. Part of this entire build, and I said it earlier, was to challenge myself. And how I'm doing that is building everything by scratch. And here's another example of it. I built my own cart. I'm very happy with how this turned out, actually. Took a few iterations to find and end on something that I liked. But we got there, and I used these just like these generic planks from Planet Zoo. Didn't really fit with the theme, but I think it worked out. Very happy with how it turned out, and it kind of made this little cart that would deliver produce and other things to the market. And I'm really excited to see as I build them, my skills kind of come together. Now, it took a little bit. Really wanted to use more of these North African parts, but I finally got my cart put together, placed a few of them around in strategic locations where you can kind of see in, or if you were to peek through the doors, I will eventually go there, you'd be able to see it. I put it off to the side just in case, because you never know, you might need to get more. And then I decided to work on the banisters. And these banisters go all the way through, so I'm just going to cut through it, but really wanted to add something to the top, and you're not just going to have flat spaces. Ideally, and in hindsight, we should have put doors up here to make it give a little bit more realism, so people could essentially walk out there. But regardless, I think it actually worked out, and having these here gave it a little bit more life, and that was the entire idea. We wanted to have more life in this exhibit. Now we're actually about halfway through this entire speed build. I think we're moving along quite well. And speaking of life in this exhibit, I said exhibit, it's not, it's a market. But I wanted to add more of these North African beams. So a lot of architecture, I feel, especially older architecture, a lot of the items used to kind of reinforce would be these logs, and they would be embedded in the plaster, and then they would hold them together. Now, really wanted to kind of close off these alleyways, and initially when I built this entire thing, I was under the impression, and I believed I was only going to go with one row. Ended up changing my mind, and you're going to see how that turned out. But again, we used our tried and true method. We took the door handles and then turned them into hinges for these giant doors, and then placed it around. Now, in hindsight, I built these arches way too high. I had a belief that these doors were huge. I stacked one on top of the other. I played around with it, did not work out. So I ended up having to kind of change it up a little bit, but made it really work out, and it kind of added more life. Again, we're using that word to the overall build. Speaking of lived in, we added a little bit of more baskets. Found these baskets. We placed one earlier on the tower, so placed more of these up on the balconies, and I felt that this would be a great way to fill up the space, add a little bit more realism without having to have something that staff would eventually have to go up and kind of maintain. And greenery is not something we can maintain. Ivy we could pass off as something that would naturally grow there, but these pots worked out really well, and you can kind of see found quite a few pots. In fact, a lot of these pots, if I'm not mistaken, are actually part of the India pack. As you can see right here, we're placing bolts of cloth from the India pack to give a little bit more color. And then we also found these fancy dancy little fruit things that were actually meant to go for market stalls. So it worked out really well in trying of creating and pulling it together. Same for these little vehicles, these Indian auto cars, and then again, same for the Indian tea. I will admit, a lot of the additional builds, like all the small things, are actually coming from the India pack, not the North African pack. But I think that it was close enough that it kind of worked out, and it fit together really nice. Again, we're adding more greenery as well, try to keep up with the little, all the drab and dreary colors, give it a little bit more, color variation, and then add a little bit more to give it a lived-in feel, give it a little bit more realistic feel with those baskets. Now, the floor is a big thing. We initially had the concrete path, and then I wanted to place something down that would give it a little bit more of a North African market feel. So I actually stumbled across these these temple stones. I don't actually sandstone brick walls for the roof. So I kind of lowered it down, made it flush with the floor, and then kind of placed them all around. And in fact, actually having the sand the way it was, where it started to cover a little bit, it actually kind of gave it the idea of having a little, city that was lost to time. Sand dunes kind of formed and carried over. So I actually stuck with that throughout the rest of the build. Now we're actually adding in more oases, and the entire idea behind it was, as is the name of the zoo, but we wanted to marry the fennec fox exhibit to this spice market. And there's not a whole lot you can do from a terraforming perspective to give it that feel. So instead, we went with adding in some water features, things like that, and then we placed down our paths. And then I extended out this sandstone path all the way down so that you would transition. You'd pass through these water features, these oases, and then into the spice market. I think it worked really well. I'm very happy with it. I do come back to it and add a little bit more of a feature to it, but it worked out. Now there is one thing that I keep on forgetting, which is align to surface. Sometimes I have it on, sometimes I don't, and when I don't have it on, I need it on, and when I have it on, I don't need it on. It was very frustrating, but we got there. Now the other thing I noticed as I was building this is that I actually got the water features to work correctly. It was actually more flush with the floor, and we'd struggle with that in quite a few situations. And I think in hindsight, something that we have to keep in mind is you do your water first. The first thing you do of your exhibit is your water, and then you build up around it, because I think that's the struggle that we always have. Now you can see that I keep on going out because I'm trying to look at it from further away, and this is where I decided that I wanted to have a second alleyway. We're not going to utilize it. We have a few staff buildings that we're going to put in there because we're going to make use of that space. No customers are going to go here. The entire idea behind it was, again, to give it a little bit more impact in terms of scope, and this is really where that budget kind of ballooned. We used up a lot of money, and I actually had to stop playing, or stop building anyway, just to play the game to generate more funds. It was very interesting because I don't often run into a situation where I've run out of money. You can kind of see it, played around with it, deleted it a few times. And part of the reason why is actually the auto terraforming. It was too high up, and then doing it one at a time just really wasn't working out. But we got there eventually. And again, like I said, a lot of zooming out and zooming back in, just to see how it looks from afar, because I think that's what is really important as well, is keeping in mind the view from above and from far out. Now we're finally adding in some more color, and it came back to this India piece, which are these hanging cloths, and I'm surprised that they don't have something like this in the overall pack for North Africa, but we added in these hanging sheets, and I felt that it really kind of fit the idea that you would walk into this market, you'd see a lot of colorful items. And I've tried to place down these sun covers so many times, could never get it to work, and I finally did. I'm so happy that I can actually use this in a way that actually is cool. I'm really happy with the way it works. That being said, I really wish there was more we could do with the ropes, and the reason why is because they're straight, or they have little bends, but they don't have one that starts in a bend and then terminates at the bottom, to kind of give it that idea that you're holding something up. So kind of played around with it. I cut out a lot of the rope making because it's fairly generic, but we placed more ropes around just to give it that market feel, and it really kind of holds everything together. Now this is the other thing, and this is the sunshade I keep on trying to use. I did not realize that you could dye these for the longest time, so I changed all the colors to get a little bit more nicer. I tried with all black, it just does not look good. So then I played with these different colors, and I gotta say, it looked really nice. And this is something that, our vision is coming to life, and that's what I'm super happy about. Wanted to add a lot of other items to the walls as well, so you can kind of see these rugs come out, these lamps coming back in, but it added again a little bit more color variety. Everything's still looking really bland, and so again, one last shout out to Discord member Axel, who really had a lot of cool ideas in terms of this overall build. He's provided a lot of feedback, and I just want to say, not just him, but everybody else who's providing feedback, by all means, I actually read it, I do listen to it, I try to follow along with it, and if you want to provide that feedback, feel free to drop a comment. We're here to help out. Now we are getting near the end of the build. We only have about 10 minutes left in this overall video. So what I do want to say while we're watching this happen is if you feel up to it, subscribe. We've seen a lot of subscribers join the channel, and I'm super happy about that. If you want to help out as well, I encourage you to join. It lets me know I'm doing a really good job, and it's a great way to show that you're enjoying it as well. If you're up to it as well, feel free to join the Discord. We have a lot of fun there. There's a lot of interactivity. We're doing a lot of really cool initiatives and features and things like that, so I do encourage everybody to join. So we're finally back at the tower, and I really wanted to do something with this. It was very bland, and I gotta say it was a struggle for me to kind of identify something I could do with this tower to make it kind of look really cool and neat. We actually come back to it a few times, and you know, one piece of feedback that I have for you guys is if you're struggling with a build and you're just not happy with how it's turning out, leave it, let it go, and come back later, and you know, who knows what'll happen. Now again, we're seeing more of these Indian architecture pieces kind of cropping up in the overall build, but I think it actually it fits really well. Now the other thing with this door at the bottom, originally we placed a plaster wall just to kind of cover it up, but I wanted to have something a little bit more unique, and I thought about adding these sandstone bricks. They're not bricks, but wanted to add them in to add a little bit more flavor to the overall build, and then marry it. Now we're finally getting onto the fixtures, which in this case, surprisingly, we don't have a bathroom in this entire zoo. So we've added 2 to compensate. Now, is it good that they're both over here in this section? No, but you know what? People will walk for a bathroom. I will say this though, we're not going to charge for them. Bathrooms should be free. It's a requirement. You know, I think everybody should have the ability to go to the washroom and not have to pay for it. So we finally put in some bathrooms, and then we also off camera placed some of our buildings. Now you're going to notice that Chief Beef appears a few times, and I was neglecting my research. I forgot to research additional buildings, and what ended up happening is that I had to reuse Chief Beef a few times. But rest assured, one of the items that I have on board is the ability to kind of fix this. Now things are coming together. We're finally placing down our first official signs. Went with the wall sign at first because I really just wanted to have a sign there. Decided that I did not like it, and I knew that there was a this sign bracket. For the life of me, could not find it for however long I was looking for it, but we finally stumbled across it, and I'm happy that we actually went with it because I gotta say it looks really nice. Rest assured, we're not placing a second one though. We're actually just utilizing the build overall, and then we're going to place more signs. I'm going to cut out a lot of the signs because it's pretty generic, but I will say one thing about these signs, and I did not realize. Did you know that they're only one-sided? For a hanging sign to be only one-sided, very frustrating. But we made it work. Here you can see kind of our Chief Beef, but that was when I realized it was one-sided. So we placed our signs, we fixed it up, and then we started placing them all the way through. And I gotta say, at night, it looks amazing. Seeing all these signs light up and stuff like that, it worked out really cool, and I'm really happy with it. All right, we're in the home stretch. We're placing down our tables. First time that we're actually finally putting something that's it's letting us know we're in the home stretch. Wanted to place down a lot of these lights as well. I kind of did it off camera, but this actually came from another recommendation, was to have these gas lamps all the way through. Originally, and I'm kind of sad that we don't have the ability to kind of put like a wire hanging, like kind of like an electrical wire or something like that. So if that actually does exist and I just haven't stumbled across it, by all means correct me, because that would be really cool, because I would love to kind of connect them to wires and make it kind of seem a little bit more realistic. We're bringing our, you just saw that we brought our terraforming skills all the way around, kind of created these sand dunes, and then now we're placing our flower pots. Initially they're all yellow because I was just copying and pasting them, but I did adjust all the colors all the way through to kind of give it a little bit more of a life. And then on top of that, I wanted to place these plants, and, you know, just the same plant over and over again. I did remember to rotate them this time, but it just adds a little bit more color, a little bit more flavor to the overall build, and this is where I kind of get those colors set up. So again, we're using these jump cuts just to cut out a lot of the content that's repeating, and I don't want to kind of keep you guys here for no reason. But there's one thing I wanted to focus on, which was this fence. Now, when I think about going to a zoo and they have this like a water feature or an area where we really don't want guests to travel into, I think about these like blocking it off with a fence. And I stumbled across the idea of utilizing 2 curved things to kind of create a natural movement. The downside with that, obviously, is you need a lot of room to do so, and in looking at it, it wasn't looking really good. I really didn't want to have it on the rocks the way I did, so I settled for a middle ground, which is I just had them at an angle. In hindsight, I would really love to see like an S curve go there. Now, built it on the other side, so I mirrored it on the other side. Again, cut that out. And then we're finally putting up our sign. We're going to call it the Spice Souk, that being the traditional word for a spice market. And you can kind of see I'm playing around with a lot of the colors and stuff like that. I couldn't really decide on a font. I'm actually sad that they don't have the option for a size. I'm really shocked that you can't just like dictate the size of it, but we finally placed it all together. Now, we saw a little bit of a jump cut because I was done. I was actually done with this build, very happy with the way it worked, and then this was where the recommendation came in to add a little bit more color. And I really wanted to kind of keep it in here because I felt like it's important for you guys to see the change that having some white in these buildings actually worked out. And the way it was brought to my attention was like, think about if you play it, Assassin's Creed, the first one, and I actually did try to look this up. Originally, it was part of the idea, like part of my inspiration. All their buildings are white. And I realized this after building it. I was like, I can't do white anymore. And the reason why is because we've already built the entire zoo around these dark brown blocks. So I did the second story as white. One, this adds a little bit of color flavor to it. We're gonna hide it with some tiles. I'll leave that in there for you guys to see, but we're gonna hide the transition with tiling. But I think it adds a lot of extra flavor to it. But I gotta say, a lot of work went into just recoloring these buildings. And my recommendation for you guys is, maybe decide the color before you build everything. I'm going to leave the commentary here, though. Again, I just want to say, if you guys are really enjoying this series, please feel free to subscribe. It really helps me out. It lets me know I'm doing a good job, and I would appreciate that. Otherwise, as always, ciao for now, everybody.